sometimes we see in commercial real estate, you have kind of the operator and the developer, and then you have a capital raiser,
right?
And maybe they have different agendas, or they communicate differently, or someone promises one thing, but maybe the partners. So it's nice to be able to sort of have control of that messaging throughout the process, to where, we find the land, we design the product, we build the product, we fill the product, we operate the product. And I think that goes a long way into ensuring that we have some quality control measures. And for investors, it's nice to know who's accountable. If the project fails, it's probably mostly my fault. And, in so much as one person can be at fault. And so I think investors like the idea that I have a key person. Now I have backups and I have support, and, I'm well insured. So if something happens to me, the investors are made whole. But ultimately, it's not, sometimes when a deal goes bad, you see these situations where there's like 10 partners and they're all pointing fingers, and someone just needs to be accountable to the investors to go, hey, here's what went wrong. Here's how we're going to fix it. Here's what we learned. And that's entirely our ethos.
Your network is your net worth. Come listen to some of the most successful people I know share invaluable knowledge, stories, and advice in real estate, business, and beyond. This is Weiss Advice. Whether you want to take your business or personal life to the next level, look no further. Welcome back to Weiss Advice. I am your host, Yona Weiss, and with me today is a very fine gentleman, Loe Hornbuckle, all the way out from sunny Texas. How are you today?
I'm doing very well. I was pausing when you said fine gentleman. I assumed someone else was joining the show.
Yeah, he's coming in shortly, actually.
It's also raining here today. So really, I'm not a fine gentleman, and it's not sunny in Texas. But generally speaking, most of your guests are fine gentlemen, I'm sure.
Yeah, usually. Or women. We're equal.
Exactly. That's right.
And you, just to be clear, you are the CEO of Goodhorn Capital that we got.
Yeah, sort of. I mean, I'm kind of a co-CEO with my partner, Austin Good. So, it's obviously you get a guy named Austin Good and Loe Hornbuckle together. And obviously you're going to create a company called Goodhorn.
There you
go. Of course, then you're going to have a ram, and the ram's going to be climbing the mountain. And now you've just gotten some backstory into our wonderful logo.
That's awesome. I'd love to get a little, into the brand and into the logo. It makes a lot of sense. That's awesome. So let's hear a little context about Loe. As we mentioned, based in Texas, he's been a real estate investor for many years. It has an interesting journey how he got into it. Not only is he an investor, but he's a developer, which is something we don't talk a lot about on this show. And not only does he, focus on multifamily, but actually more specifically into assisted living, memory care facilities. So we're talking about a different asset class, which is very similar to multifamily in a lot of ways. But if you haven't learned about this asset class, I think you're going to get some major insights today. So buckle up.
Hornbuckle up.
Get it?
Yeah. Hornbuckle up. Yeah. We're going to be using that later, I'm sure.
So, Loe, tell me a little bit how you came into the assisted living industry and real estate in general, because you started off, right? Obviously, no one starts necessarily on, not no one, but most people don't start off in real estate. It's kind of a windy journey how you get there.
Most of my business background, I worked in a car dealership. So I ran a car dealership for a long time. The vast majority of my career, I was in the finance department, which was good. I mean, because you learn to sell, you obviously you'll learn how to do paperwork. But the most important thing I think you learn is you sort of learn how to underwrite risk in a way, because you're giving loans to people. Sometimes the dealership's holding the paper, sometimes the dealership's selling the paper. And what I found was kind of my best skill was being able to consistently go to banks and get them to help out and get a deal done. That's a very specific type of relationship selling, because if we're in a relationship and I'm calling you every day to try to get you to do something, I can't shoot the moon every time, because if I'm constantly asking you to do a deal, constantly asking you to do a deal as a bank, and then that deal doesn't perform very well, it starts to reflect poorly on you, the buyer. So you have to kind of really straddle that line. You have to create kind of win-win situations. And so, for 8 or 9 years, all I did every day was really just talk to people and try to get them to see my perspective, but also be respectful of their point of view and kind of come up with solutions. There's a lot of compromise and a lot of creativity involved.
Well, that's fascinating.
And every car dealer, at some point in their career, it seems like, starts up a side business, because you're at the car dealership all the time. And when you're in the car business, your quality of life, it's not always great, because you really have to be there, And so if you have to be there a lot, everyone's like, oh, I'm going to start this other business. I'm going to have my cousin run it for me, and I'm going to be making this money on the side. Every car dealer does that, I think. And usually we fail. Like, I've done some of the dumbest business ideas. I once once got partnered up with a guy, and we were shipping cars all over the country. I met him on Craigslist. That didn't predictably well, not well. But one of the side businesses I got into is I wanted to get into rental property. Mm-hmm. So 2007, 2008, during the crash, we started buying up a bunch of property. 2007 was the first year we got in. First deal didn't go so well, and then 2010, 2011 got really active, and so we were buying real estate, myself and a business partner. And we got to where we had about 100 single family homes in Shreveport, Louisiana. Mm-hmm. I was self-managing those, and that's kind of how I got the real estate bug, was getting into that kind of single family homes. And then as I started to transition out of the dealership, and I loved what I did for a living, but again, I just didn't want my career path to be like, I work really hard so I can become the general manager. And yeah, they make a lot of money, but they work a lot, and it wasn't the model for me. I wanted something. I know later you're going to ask what my definition of success is. So I won't spoil the secret, but ultimately it wasn't what I wanted. And so I went through this kind of soul searching phase where I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do, and ultimately decided that I was going to jump into multifamily. Took a job working as a property manager, and a 400 unit complex in Fort Worth. And I didn't really like it. And what I remembered was when the summer was bearing down and I was thinking about the kids being out of school, I was like, I really don't want to be here when the kids are out of school. Because I remember when I was at the community, when the kids were in school, it was like pretty good job, but these kids were pretty bad. And like, these were like the kids that would like, hey, let's throw cinder blocks at the air conditioner and see what happens. Oh my goodness. So I was constantly running around, like looking at that stuff. And I'm like, why are you destroying your own air conditioner? Like, you're just going to call and say your house is hot. Like, it was a wild time, and I just didn't want to be doing that. And then right as that stuff was happening, my dad got really sick and sort of went through a hospice process, and it really wasn't a good process. And it just sort of led me, it wasn't linear, but I just started reconsidering, like, if I'm going to do something, maybe I should do something that I feel like helps people. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of how Sage Oak was born. My dad's struggle with, getting adequate care at the end of his life really led me to start a company that's really tailored to helping people. We're not a hospice company, but so many of our residents, maybe 20, 30% are on hospice at any given time. So, we're providing, we're usually where they go to go through end of life. So that's been my focus now since 2015, and then kind of the inspiration for the company.
Wow. So, okay. So that was going to be my next question, but you kind of segued into that, because getting into the assisted living, and it's a whole industry. And I know there are many variants and many, I guess you would call stages of different types of skilled living, assisted living, memory care, all these different levels in that. But you're doing something kind of unique in that, well, I wouldn't say it's unique, but it's unique when we think about multifamily people just investing in general, because you are a developer as well. So you kind of have to see the whole picture even before you are thinking of investing. You have to make the plans, you have to get the permits, you have to get all the business in line as well. So when you're doing that, and because I want to combine this with something similar that you mentioned before about your finance and your background with the car dealership, in making that business plan that you're coming up with this assisted living facility, obviously there's tons of moving parts. You probably have to deal with, development. You have to deal with land. You have to deal with the municipalities. You have to deal with finding those. I assume you have, you're not the hospice company, but you deal with other third-party companies kind of work in your services, in your facilities. When you're putting that all together, and I'm just formulating a question here, so bear with me.
This could be a good question.
It could be, and it could flop. So,
but I'll try to answer it well either way.
But my question is, when you're formulating this all together, is it all you and your partner, or is there a whole team that you have around this that you're able to bring together to make this work?
Yeah. I mean, I think I certainly come from the school of thought that, no matter how successful a person is, nobody's really self-made. We all takes a community to formulate anybody, right? Like, I didn't build the roads that I drove on to get to work. I didn't educate my staff before they came to work for me, right? But I mean, ultimately, we like to think of ourselves as vertically integrated. So in terms of the things that we do, we look for land ourselves. We engage with the city to, make sure the product that we're going to design is going to make them happy. We sort of look at the physical plant, which the building that we're building, that it sort of checks off the boxes of our philosophies of care. That's really where we start. We start with this kind of grand idea of, hey, this is how we think congregate housing. This is how we think people that are, have dementia. This is how people that, have mobility challenges. This is the environment they're going to want to age in. And these are the things that we need to have in this physical plant. Kind of resolve all that with the city. And then we raise the money for those projects. We raise our own capital. And then my business partner is a builder. And so he's the general contractor. And then when he builds it, I'm the operator. So I go in and, hire the team and fill the property and, make decisions about, where we're getting food from and all that stuff. So we're pretty much vertically integrated from soup to nuts. Along the way, we do use a lot of professional trades. So obviously we have a lot of legal representation. From a securities point of view. We have a, legal representation. If we're having to, like one of our projects, we're having to kind of work on an easement with a major gas company. So we're kind of doing that with legal representation. But then really what we do outsource a lot of is the architectural piece, the civil engineering, the landscape architecture, those types of things. And then we'll generally bring in design-minded people to help with furniture selection, but we're interfacing with that whole process. So we're sort of interfaced with sort of every step of the process, right? So, we like that because it allows us to have a very consistent message. And, sometimes we see in commercial real estate, you have kind of the operator and the developer, and then you have a capital raiser,
right?
And maybe they have different agendas or they communicate differently, or someone promises one thing, but maybe the partners. So it's nice to be able to sort of have control of that messaging throughout the process to where, we find the land, we design the product, we build the product, we fill the product, we operate the product. And I think that goes a long way into ensuring that we have some quality control measures. And for investors, it's nice to know who's accountable. If the project fails, it's probably mostly my fault. And, in so much as one person can be at fault. And so I think investors like the idea that I have a key person. Now I have backups and I have support and, I'm well insured. So if something happens to me, the investors are made whole, but ultimately, it's not, sometimes when a deal goes bad, you see these situations where there's like 10 partners and they're all pointing fingers, and someone just needs to be accountable to the investors to go, hey, here's what went wrong. Here's how we're going to fix it. Here's what we learned. And that's entirely our ethos. I'm developing in a market right now that's had 2 hurricanes this year. First time it's ever happened in one hurricane season, where the town got hit by a hurricane twice in the same season. And of course, in a global pandemic. So, we're getting a trial by fire. Well, maybe not fire, a trial by rain and wind for sure.
Right. For sure.
And it's great to go through that because you like to think it's going to be easier. You like to think that you're not going to be developing global pandemics and, epic natural disasters all the time. So if you get through this, then it should get easier.
It'll be easy going, hopefully.
Yes. I'm constantly logging into itgetsbetter.org. It's not really designed for me, but I like the messaging that it's going to get better. So I'm just constantly getting on there.
That's a good outlook. It's a good outlook because
yes.
You have to plan for the worst, right? And hope for the best and just try to keep that business plan functioning regardless of, what gets thrown your way.
They say everyone has a plan until you get punched. And so I like to get punched early, and then my plan can incorporate, okay, well, these are the punches you've taken. So that's kind of our corporate ethos by accident.
Right. Not that you necessarily want to get into that, in the first place, but when you do, you deal with it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, what is maybe just touch on this a little bit. What is assisted living? What is the difference between skilled living, and what is your main focus? Because I know you have different facilities.
That's right. Yeah. So, I think the easiest way to think about it is there's kind of a spectrum, and the spectrum really is a continuum of care. So a lot of it's really about centered around the resident's needs. So at the very entry level into senior housing, which is a terminology that people use, in my opinion, it's virtually meaningless because for the most part, senior housing, you have independent living, which is basically, it's like apartments for folks that are older, usually age restricted. A lot of these people are very active. You can be 55 and up, 62 and up. A lot of 55 and 62-year-olds, most are still driving. They're still very independent. They just want to be around other people with similar interests. You see a lot of this in Florida, Arizona, the Sun Belt, golf courses, tennis courts. This is really hospitality. There's no healthcare component. They may have, like if you go on a cruise, there's like someone on board that's a doctor, and they maybe have that at the facility, but there's no medical care. There's no care oversight. It's just hospitality geared toward a certain age group. Mm-hmm. On the very other end of the spectrum is skilled nursing. So this is going to be, you've got a nurse assigned to you. You're getting 24/7 around the clock care. You could be, bed bound. You could be, possibly not even awake. You're pretty sick. And those are kind of the two ends of the spectrum. And we're We're in between those. I wouldn't say we're in the middle, but we focus on what we consider to be high acuity assisted living and memory care. These are people that have pretty important needs. So mobility challenges, maybe they've been a fall risk. Perhaps they have oftentimes have cognitive impairment if they're in memory care, Parkinson's, ALS, things like that. So these are people that have pretty serious needs. And so we are, even though our model is social, there's a medical component to it. So you have to have some basic medical knowledge, be a caregiver. We have nursing oversight. Many times, some of our other facilities will have a medical director that's a physician that oversees the care of the patients. We're not delivering any of that care, but we're coordinating. So we're calling doctors if a resident's condition changes. We're having some behaviors. We're having some of this. We're having some of that. We're interfacing with the doctor, interfacing with the families. Interfacing with home health, therapy, hospice. We're kind of the quarterback of their medical care. And then, of course, you still have the hospitality component. We're still in beautiful buildings. We're still cooking meals for them, cleaning, doing all those things. So we're kind of a blend of healthcare and hospitality with a little bit of a lean toward healthcare is probably the best way to understand it. So
yeah, I like that.
Biggest difference between assisted living and memory care, when I describe that, in memory care, the client can't be their own advocate. That's the basic difference. In assisted living, if I burn your toast, you're like, hey, you burned my toast, make me some new toast. Got it. In memory care, they may not be able to tell you that. They may not be able to verbalize that. They may not be able to put that into words, even if they know the toast is burnt and they don't want to eat it. So in memory care, you have to have caregivers that are a bit more empathetic and kind of put themselves in the shoes of the client, because the client isn't able to necessarily be their own advocate. And memory care is really kind of a misnomer. A lot of people that have dementia don't have any memory issues at all, but it's just sort of a catch-all term. When I say to memory care, I mean basically dealing with people that have some kind of cognitive impairment, whether that be dementia, Parkinson's, other neurological conditions, things like that.
What's your general ratio, if you have one, to from caregivers to residents?
Yeah, good question. And a really important part of our culture. So the model we focus on is we're always going to kind of, depending on the facility and the situation, our target during the day is 1 to 4. So 1 caregiver for every 4 residents, and to 1 to 6. So we're going to be in that range, 1 to 4, 1 to 6 during the day. Generally no more than 1 to 8 at night, maybe 1 to 10, but that's pretty rare. Generally 1 to 8 is kind of our target. And in a lot of our competitors and other sort of big box, more traditional assisted living, because we have kind of a unique building style, we do a bunch of care homes on one campus. So if we'll have a 96 bed facility, instead of having one facility licensed for 96 beds, we'll have 16 bed facilities, all with an independent license, separate addresses, different, sometimes they'll feel different, they'll look different, all the very, very, very much more of a boutique. Like imagine like if you go to a boutique hotel and instead of being, one hotel, it's like 5 or 6 hotels all on one campus, and they all have kind of different feels and environments. That's really kind of what we specialize in. Well, in those bigger sort of more traditional, the sort of more traditional assisted living facilities, the nursing homes that you see, their ratios are often double or triple ours in terms of being worse. So you'll often see, during the day, 1 to 10, 1 to 12, 1 to 15, sometimes at night, 1 to 20. And so the ability for them to deliver care, to give personalized attention, to cook a good meal, to pause in the middle of a chaotic day and just spend quality time with the resident, greatly diminished. So it definitely feels more like you're a number and less of a person sometimes in these larger settings.
For sure.
And so what we try to do is we try to flip that on its head and make it very personal. Obviously everyone wants one-on-one attention, but the truth is we have neither enough healthcare workers to deliver that product. Most people don't have the money to pay for that. And so what you really want is you want a shared care environment, where you're sharing care with other people, but you want it in a way where you still do get some good attention, So one of the big cultural differences between us is, say in a big building, if I'm an executive director of a 200 bed facility, if you walk in and you see your caregiver sitting in a residence room watching TV, well, they're getting written up for not working. In our environment, we encourage that because they're spending quality time with the resident, right? Now, obviously it depends on the program. Are we watching a show that the resident wants to watch with the resident, or are we watching a show the caregiver wants to watch and the resident's like being held hostage, like, whatever.
Diminishing from, their abilities to actually give care.
Yeah. So we encourage quality time. Whereas in other facilities, they run so thin that essentially another sort of cultural difference is, like in big facilities, you have a window of time they're going to get you up. And that's because they have resources at a certain time to get everybody out of bed. If you need assistance, to get you dressed, get your hair combed, get you showered, brush your teeth, whatever the case may be, and get you get you to breakfast. Well, they have a window of time, and you're waking up at that time. And if you don't wake up at that time, that's that. Wow. And it's a very different experience. Some people could liken it to prison in some cases,
right?
And it's not a great living in situation. With us, it's like, hey, if you want to sleep until 10:30, that's fine. We'll hold your breakfast for you. We'll heat it up in the microwave or the oven and make sure that you still have everything. So it's just a totally different,
much different
setup
experience.
and feeling, much more personalized. And so we've kind of decided that it's a boutique. So we sort of use the word boutique assisted living and memory care to kind of describe, our services, to kind of distill it in a small way.
Probably cater to a different demographic than probably would you say?
In a way, I mean, I would say we do cater to a different demographic, but I think you probably meant financial. Our demographic really probably is people that have higher care needs. So you're going to slip through the cracks. If there's one caregiver for every 12 or 15 residents and you have high care needs, you're going to slip through the cracks, or that facility is going to ask you to have, your own caregivers come in and assist you because they can't keep up with your needs. Our cost structure is very similar. We're very price competitive. So what I like to think about is that they spend money on amenities and we spend money on caregivers. So, they may have this beautiful gym and an underwater treadmill. So you can do this crazy exercise you're never going to do. And they got the chandeliers and, they have a really nice local artist that has painted all this. And at the end of the day, a lot of our residents, it's great care, great food, great communication is what matters, right? No one's looking up at the chandelier. Yeah. When mom, when mom passes away and I get a letter from the family, they're never like, hey, really love the chandelier. Thank you so much for that. That never happens, right? It's always about, hey, thank you for being there. Thank you for riding in the ambulance with them when I was out of town. Thank you for your love and care. Thank you for doing this. Those things are what come up. And so we've just kind of, a lot of our clients have sort of gone through the process of falling for the smoke and mirrors, or the amenities, the gyms and the transportation and large groups of people to play bingo or do other activities. Those were appealing at a time. And then something changes with the resident. They have a fall, they have a change in condition. Maybe their disease progresses if they have a cognitive impairment like dementia or Alzheimer's. And now none of that stuff's important. Now they get that it's all about care, food, and communication. So we try to distill it down to what our clients really need and then not have as much of the fluff.
Okay.
The other buildings are more of a commodity.
That makes sense.
That just basically look like the other buildings, and we're competing over look how nice our gym is, or look how nice our chandelier is, and whereas we're competing on, we might be able to keep your mom from falling less, and we'll be able to make sure if she needs to gain weight, we can help her with that, or if she needs to lose weight, we can help her with that, and if she gets up a lot at night, we'll have extra hands to make sure that she gives the care that she needs, so she can be safe when she goes to the bathroom.
Right. No, 100%. And those are the important things. Absolutely.
Yeah.
What would you say would be the biggest challenge that you faced or even are currently facing in this space?
Without a doubt. I mean, it's definitely related to talent acquisition. Look, being a caregiver is a hard job. We have a shortage in America, just like we have demographic trends that are in our favor from a resident point of view. We have demographic trends that are not in our favor from hiring good staff. And so it's definitely a challenge. And caregivers and often a lot of healthcare workers, they're kind of on this place where we all think they're really important and we all put a lot of value in them. But because of sort of the American style of medicine and how we sort of reward things, we don't pay them very well. And so it's a real challenge to just, hey, do you want to do a really hard job and not be paid very well? Most people don't say yes to that. And so people have to have a heart for it. People do this because they love residents and they care a lot. And, a lot of caregivers are working, a job and a half, sometimes 2 jobs, kind of make ends meet. They're lifting weight, they're lifting things, they're cooking, they're cleaning, they're dealing with dementia. It's a very tough job. And, we couldn't, if we paid them $1 million an hour, we still couldn't pay them enough. That they do such awesome work. And so a big part of me being in the industry is really trying to think about the dual challenge of not wanting to charge our clients so much that it's not, affordable for some families, but at the same time, making sure that our caregivers, have a living wage and can take care of their families because they're doing, really important work. And, if you're religious, you'd say they're doing God's work because they're taking care of people that can't take care of themselves. And, they deserve all the credit, accolade, and all the money in the world.
Absolutely. So do you have people in-house dealing with talent acquisition, or do you kind of?
Yeah. So we do. And, we're working on a couple things. I mean, one of my long-term goals is I believe that I believe that the healthcare industry in particular is really ripe for employee ownership, having employees that have ownership in the company and act as if they're owners. And we just think that's an important part of that. When you have investors, right? So we have really three masters we serve, right? We serve, our residents, we serve our staff, and we serve our shareholders. And you can always tell some companies really don't care about any of their stuff, right? Like, as an example, famous car company, electric vehicles, I think they care about their shareholders. They don't seem to care much about their customers. Maybe they care about their workers. I don't know. But so you always see these companies kind of struggling with decisions about which master to serve. And for us, ultimately we're responsible for the safety and well-being of people. So we have to put our customers first, which are our residents and our families. Right. And then ultimately, we value the workers. They're critical. And there's definitely more of a supply demand of great caregivers than there are of investors. And so, sure. We still able to take care of our investors, but ultimately in some situations they have to come last, because you take a pandemic that's been just really challenging for our industry. And, we had to suspend distributions for 6 months, and all of our investors totally understood it, because the vast majority of our investors have had a mom or dad in the facility, have had a loved one in the facility. A lot of these people invested because it touched their heart. Mm-hmm. And, when I'm like, hey, we need to bolster resources to keep everybody safe, everyone understood that. So our investors are very understanding that the stakes of this business is higher in most cases. If you mess up, if we're selling shoes and we make a mistake, someone might get a blister. If you make a mistake in assisted living, someone could die, someone could get hurt. You could have a caregiver injure themselves, things like that. So sure. That's our focus is making sure we keep everybody safe, that the workers are well taken care of. And our philosophy is that then that will be good for the investors, because happy caregivers are happy to your residents.
Sure. 100%. All right, Loe, the time has come to jump into the final four. Are you ready?
Let's do it.
First question I have for you is, what is the worst job that you ever had?
I actually have two terrible jobs. When I was in high school, my mother was in the hospital business, and I used to deliver code blue pumps so basically when someone was coding, they would have this thing, and then I was in central supply. So I'd have to grab a little cart and a little pump thing. I guess it was going to do something, or IV or something. And I'd grab it after I cleaned it, and I'd have to run to the room, and they'd be like doing chest compressions on someone, and I would like hand them this thing. Oh, man. And so I did that at like 15. So that was a really tough job. Now, I didn't do that very much. Like, my primary job was like refilling machines and cleaning things and doing all that stuff. But I was delivering code blue pumps when someone passed away. It was a very strange job for a high schooler. I'm going to skip the second one, because now that I said that one out loud, the first one's way worse.
Okay, that's good. We'll keep it at one. Second question: what is a book you've read that's given you a paradigm shift? And obviously, you don't have to say Rich Dad Poor Dad, because everyone else has already.
Definitely, I'm not going to say that, and we're not going to hearken ourselves back to the Omar Khan controversy. Shout out to my friend Omar. But I think for me, the biggest thing was probably a book called Now Discover Your Strengths. It's based on Gallup research, and they studied a lot of high performers. Basically, it kind of deals with the paradigm of that you have natural talents and abilities, and if you work on your weaknesses, at best you'll probably just be okay. If you focus on your strengths and talents, you can become very successful. They kind of approach it from a neurological point of view, with the idea being that you have neural pathways in your brain that move much faster than I do in mine. And there's a reason why certain people can do math in their head. There's a reason why certain people can carry a tune and others can't. There's a reason why some people have really impressive muscle memory. They learn how to swing a baseball bat one time and it just clicks. And so a lot of that has to do with the fact that their neural pathways in their brain are wired to basically be fast. And if you want to do something good, get on a fast neural highway versus, one of the ones where like it's firing kind of slow. Like, it doesn't matter how hard I try, I can't sing.
Interesting.
If I train myself to sing, I would just be a bad singer. Right. So focus on things that I can actually do.
That's interesting. So it gives you kind of directions into how to recognize those things that you may be better at.
Yeah, and it's the cool thing about it is that it has a built-in strengths finder test that's been refined over the years. There's a whole series of books like, Now Discover Your Strengths. Mm-hmm. It's The Manager, and it goes through all these different things. And it's all based on Gallup research. And then they help you figure out what your top 5 talent themes are. So like, for example, I'm kind of weird. I look to the future a lot and also to the past a lot. So I use the past to add context, and I think about things in terms of the future. I'm very strategic. those types of things. So it gives you a lot of insight into you as a person. And then it gives you some exercises, and also even suggests in some cases which careers you'd be suited for based on your dominant talent themes.
Oh, that's great. Okay. Yeah. I mean, it's similar to like a personality test and these kind of things. I've seen a lot of those.
It's kind of like the literature around the personality test, and the result is a personality test. So it's about a 20-year-old book series, but it's all based on Gallup research. I like the fact that it's data driven.
Sure.
Maybe the data is totally wrong, but it makes me feel good anyway. So.
All right. Well, yeah, I would definitely check that out. That link will be in the show notes. Third question for you is, what's a skill or talent that you would like to learn?
Yeah, I've been struggling with this one. I feel like I always kind of pursue everything. You know what's dumb? I need to get better at using Microsoft Excel. As dumb as that is, I hack at it so bad. My poor business partners, I have to call them and I'm like, I've ruined an Excel spreadsheet. Now I need you to fix it. I probably need to get better in Excel. That's probably the one thing I'd like to learn how to do.
Okay. That's an easy one.
It's a very sexy answer. Ladies, he's single, right. You want anybody that's working on their Excel game, please call me.
Let's end on a high note here with the fourth and final question. What does success mean to you?
So that I thought about a lot over my life, and I think it's really controlling your time. I think that, when you have everything you need, if you just go through all the list of things somebody would need, your spiritual needs, your health needs, your financial needs, your social needs, when all those are met, and you can just simply make choices about, what's in your best interest, right? Like we all make choices and we do things that maybe we don't want to do because we have to meet a financial need or a social need, or we have to do something for our health. And I think when all those needs are taken care of and you can really focus in on what you're passionate about, what you love, I think that's success for me. I've also noticed too, that for me, success, even though I want to have control of my time, I don't want 100% control, because when I have 100% control, I'm not being challenged, I'm not being pushed. And so I'm the kind of guy that I want to be challenged or pushed 10, 15, 20% of the time. And then the other period of time, just really be able to make choices about what I want to do, how do I want to do it. Some days you just don't feel like working. And some days you want to put in 15, 16 hours and you're very happy about what you do, but I don't like being told which days are which.
I hear.
And so for me, it's really about, controlling time. And I think it's the resource that I think most people misunderstand the most is time. Sure. It's just such a powerful resource. And it's the one that I spend the most time thinking about.
Okay. Well, spend time thinking about time is a good exercise, I think.
That's right.
Okay. Well, it has been a pleasure. Definitely, Loe, I have to say. Where can our listeners find you?
Well, I think the screen mirror is on, so I'm not going to point over my shoulder because there's over a 50% chance that I will point over the wrong shoulder. But if you can see kind of over my shoulder there, goodhorncapital.com. We took the liberty, since we knew we were going to be on the show. We actually have a nice little deal for the listeners. If they go to the website, they send us their email address. We'll send them a copy of my book, The Say Joke Story. And it kind of goes in a little bit more detail about the story of my dad and kind of how we kind of came up with the company and kind of our philosophies. And we always think it's a great place for either customers, or investors to start, because, if I'm going to invest in assisted living or memory care, I 100% want to know that the people have the heart for it. And I think the book sheds some light on that. So they're welcome to go there, grab a copy of the book, and if they want more information, we can set up an introductory call.
Awesome. Okay. Definitely put that link in the show notes for anyone who's listening. Thank you again, Loe. It has been a pleasure. Definitely learned a lot about assisted living and that senior housing space. Yeah. As you discussed. So I appreciate you joining me and spending your time.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure, and I'm glad we finally got a chance to chat a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. And to our listeners, remember, the best advice comes only when you ask. Real quick, I have one question for you. Did you like this episode? If you did, I want to ask you a huge favor. See, the biggest thing that helps this podcast grow and that will spread this message to the whole world is that if you leave a review, a rating, and subscribe to the podcast. What that does is it basically tells the platforms that this podcast is out on is that you like my stuff and I'm doing something right. So take a few seconds out of your day, hit that subscribe button, leave a rating or review. I would be extremely grateful. Also, I want to hear from you guys. So I want to hear some feedback. If you have any questions for future episodes, please find me on LinkedIn. Send me a DM, a connection request, Yona Weiss, and I'd love to hear from you.